Welcome to Personal Landscapes. I'm your host, Brian Murdoch. You can find links for today's episode and other conversations on Books About Place at brianmurdoch.com. Today I'm speaking with Guy Kennaway. In 1997, he published a ridiculously funny comic novel called One People. It's one of those books that really captures the essence of a place and a culture. It's a work of fiction, but it's set in a real village and was inspired by real characters. Everybody's got a scheme for making money or getting rich or becoming famous, and those who attempt the schemes are usually nearly always undone in the process. But it's also a funny, endearing, and deeply human book. A book that Guy has described as a love letter to a little Jamaican fishing village. We had a very wide-ranging conversation about living as an outsider in Jamaica, about the legacy of British colonialism and slavery, about the impact of all-inclusive tourist resorts, and why he's a passionate advocate for Patwa, the national dialect. It's one of those books that leaves your stomach cramped from laughing, and where the characters stay in your head long after you've turned the last page. I really hope you enjoy our conversation. Guy Kennaway, welcome to Personal Landscapes.
Very, very nice to be here, Ryan. What an honor it is to be asked. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
When did you first go to Jamaica, and what initially attracted you to the place?
I first went in 1984. And what attracted me to Jamaica then was that it was considered, at least in Britain, quite a kind of dangerous and licentious and an inappropriate place to hang out. And this immediately attracted me. It also didn't have mass tourism then, because by the mid-'80s, kind of mass tourism was beginning to take off, and the globalization of the tourist experience was beginning to happen. But it hadn't really caught on in Jamaica for fairly obvious reasons, I discovered. And it was too later, of course. And it seemed like an interesting place where it would be a genuine experience rather than a tourist experience, which I was already beginning to be very resistant to, even in the 80s. And the licentiousness, that came from quite a lot from Ian Fleming, who invented James Bond in Jamaica. But there was also, we had quite a lot of Jamaican immigrants in Britain by this point. And they lived a kind of lifestyle that I, as a very uptight, white, English, middle-class young man, envied. They didn't seem to care much about authority. They smoked their drugs. They grew their hair. They had their own religion, which fascinated me. And it was a very good religion. It left matters of kind of doctrine and all that basically to each individual person. You could just sort of make up, not exactly make it up. And it had this lovely hymnal with all the Bob Marley songs, and it had its own haircut. And it was like, what an amazing religion. I want to find out where that originates. And they always seem in a very dour England of the 1970s. The Jamaicans always seemed like a very vibrant. I didn't know very many of them, but I used to see them on the streets of London, and I thought, I'm going to find out where they come from.
That's really interesting. They do seem to carry their own sort of sunshine with them. It's a very strong culture.
I mean, for their weight, everyone always says they punch above their weight, but it's quite extraordinary for the size of their economy and the size of their population. They've only, I think, got about 2.5 million people there. They are known all over the world. I'm not quite all over the world, but pretty well all over the world. If you say Jamaican, someone will say "Yaman" to you, almost wherever you are. And of course, those are just cliches and. Some of them rather boring and tedious. In fact, I saw a film last night about a Jamaican in America meeting white people and having their tourist culture reflected back to them, and how tedious it was that the white people had only picked up this kind of hotel culture, hotel Jamaica. But anyway, they are unbelievably confident. I mean, so confident. And the English now, we are we've had a sort of crisis of confidence, and we've been in a funk about ever since the decline of the empire, the Second World War. We have really been in a state of high anxiety about who we are, what our culture is. I don't know if this is true where you are, but particularly the white people. No, everyone. Who the hell? What is it to be English? What are we good at? What about all these terrible bad things we've done? And we grew up. I grew up being amongst people who are very cynical about the English and very about ourselves, about what we were up to. But when I got to Jamaica, one of the extraordinary things about Jamaica is how patriotic they are. I mean, the number of times you hear Jamaica in a song, if you never hear Britain or England in a song, except unless you're a right-wing maniac. It's like, to be that patriotic is to be almost fascist and unpleasant in Britain. They're very proud of being Jamaican. You see Jamaican flags as absolutely everywhere. The icon is not at all frowned on, whereas the British flag, the Union Jack, is quite frowned on because there are a lot of problems around it, or rather we see a lot of problems about it, understandably. So they're really patriotic. They're really confident. Now, I mean, they're confident about things that they have every right to be confident about. They're confident about their music and about their ability to move and dance. And they're confident about their sexuality, but they are the very, very sensual, sexual culture. But they're also confident about things that they're totally shit at. And I always say it to them. They go, Jamaican food, best food in the world. And I go, au contraire, Jamaican food is utterly shit. But you don't know that because you don't allow any other cuisine in this country because you are so proprietorial about your culture. I mean, they don't play any white music there. They play Kenny Rogers. They play
Kenny Rogers. Why?
Who knows? And a little bit of Elton John. But Kenny Rogers, if you're in a Jamaican bar, apart from when they might nowadays, of course, they might where they're mixing different tunes, you might hear a bit of a white tune being used to their purpose, put to their purpose. But an actual whole song written and sung by a white person, no. Kenny Rogers is the only one, and it's nearly always The Gambler. There's one called The Gambler. Yeah. I've listened to it quite a few times, and I just figure the philosophy of The Gambler suits them. Anyway, whatever it is, they like Kenny Rogers. And, there've been quite a lot of white musicians have ended up living there. Keith Richards did, and Johnny Cash as well. But they don't know who either of those two are. And I suspect it must be one of the appeals of of living in Jamaica for Keith Richards, is that no one would recognize Mick Jagger in my community. Absolutely nobody. I mean, they wouldn't recognize Madonna either. There is no celebrity culture there. And this is part of what you're saying about their confidence, because, and it's said by other people, but it does stand examination. They are kind of all celebrities. They all carry on as if the spotlight is on us for this short period, and let's burn it, let's burn up our lives. Let's shine as brightly as we can and take the spotlight. And as a result, they're very, even with digital media, they haven't really got iconic celebrities the way the British have. They definitely can't. Bono was shot at by the police. They thought he was a drug smuggler. Really? That's a true story. So not really the reception that he was expecting. He made the mistake of landing in a rather flashily landing in a seaplane at Negril, and he came ashore and they started shooting him, assuming that he was a drug dealer, one of the most famous men in the world. But they did not only had they not recognized him, they hadn't heard of him. They didn't know what U2 was, and they didn't know who Bono was, and it took a bit of time to clear it up.
Yeah, so the appeal of Jamaica is just going up and up and up since the beginning of this conversation. I can see why you like going there so much. So you settled in a village initially? Well,
I went to Negril, which was in the early mid-80s. It's exceedingly naturally beautiful. There are a couple of places in Jamaica. I mean, I'm sure in Canada and America it's the same. There are occasionally you come across a real natural wonder. I mean, something absolutely, jaw-droppingly beautiful. And there are one or two of those in Jamaica, and one of them is the beach at Negril, which is about 8 miles of the finest talc coral sand. And it inclines at the most beautifully shallow rake. And the water is so clear and so warm. And the coconut trees are so beautifully spread, and the coconuts just lying on the floor. It is absolutely physically beautiful, and it's positioned exactly west. And there's something with the sky, I don't know what it is, but it is blessed with the most extraordinary, what seems like a kind of freakish sunset almost every night. And when you're there, you feel in a place that God really smiles on. But unfortunately, it was a bit seedy and a bit kind of rat infested, and it had gone into decline in the 70s and 80s. Jamaica had a lot of trouble getting people there because, the law and order was totally out of control, and they didn't handle things well. So although I loved it, I didn't like hanging out with the tourists and with the people who were dealing with the tourists. So I took a car, and what I often do was, whenever I travel a place, I leave at the tourist centre, find a little place, ask to rent it, and rent a flat or a cottage, and I just sit and do nothing and just watch, because I think travel narrows the mind. In that, if you skid too fast over a country, I am not really going to see very much. So I'd rather at random take one spot, a flat, an apartment with a bar over the road, and a shop and a square, and really just sit there. Now I'm writing, so I can just sit and write. And after in the first week, you meet most of the shit people in the pub. Certainly in my pub, you meet the most boring people. They come and launch and say hello to you. You get rid of them. And then by the end of the second week, you meet someone who you saw on the first day, but he's been avoiding you because he's been thinking, I'm some random tourist. And after 2 weeks, I begin to meet the people who are more interesting. And if you stay there 30 years, that still stands. You end up knowing the community, being free of the sort of tourist froth. That scrapes off my experience of Jamaica, which is incredibly difficult to get through for most people. Anyway, so I found this little house by this woman. I said, well, you've got a nice house. Do you know anyone who's got it's like a little wooden board house right by the sea on a little creek? Very cute. I said, have you got any friends who've got something like this? She said, you can come in here. So I said, no. I was with my girlfriend. I said, no, we can't. Your granny's there and your kids are there. And they said, no, they're not. And they could be out in an hour. So I said, have they got anywhere to go? And the child said, no. She said, shut up. So she bundled them all up and put them in a car. I remember it was $50 a week. And I rented that house for a few really beautiful, beautiful weeks. And she would occasionally come around for a rent rise, which was fine by me because I thought we were doing really well and I was really happy. And I made good friends with her. And I rented the place off her for a good few years. Then one day she said she wanted to go to Canada. Where is the biggest Jamaican community in Canada?
I think Toronto is quite large.
I think Toronto is where she wanted to go, yeah.
Yeah, they have a Caribbean festival.
Right. She said she wanted to go to Toronto, but she needed to get her police record cleaned because she had been up to this and that. And that cost $2,000. And would I pay for it? So, but if I paid for it, she would go to Toronto, emigrate to Toronto, and she would sell me the house for another few $1,000s. So I said, all right, okay, let's do that. So I went, we bribed the police $2,000 to lie to the Canadian embassy, I guess, to give her a fake record. She got on the plane and went off to Toronto, and I bought her house and been there ever since. Love it. I'm just sunk into that village. Something. That book, One People, came out about 25 years ago. And I'm now considered by a few people, not many, some, as a bit of an expert on Jamaica. And I always say, I know so little about Jamaica, but I know so much about 800 square yards, the fishing, the cove, the fishermen, the bars, the people who operate around that little area, who I've known for 2 or 3 generations. Those people I do know about. But when I go out to the rest of Jamaica, I often see things I don't understand. And I would never claim to be a Jamaican expert, but I'm a Cousins Cove expert, definitely.
It's interesting. So this is the first place you initially hit on. That's the place you ended up
Yeah.
putting down roots for all this time. It's amazing how that works. I like how one random coincidence like this can lead to, but there's always a tendency to think that life goes on elsewhere or all the cool things are happening somewhere else. But
Brian,
I don't think that's true at all.
I have reverse FOMO. Definitely, I have reverse FOMO. I have absolutely no interest in what's not going on in front of my nose. It's good and bad. My friend says to me, Guy, you have reverse paranoia too. So I said, what's that? He said, you've got this delusion that everyone behind your back saying nice things. And I said, it's true, I do. They said, it's not true, Guy.
It's much better to think that, though.
But I also really think this is what I said about the apartment. Don't spend too long looking for the apartment on the square. Pick any place at random and then commit to it. I mean, obviously, if it's got a sewage problem and there's there's a major fire risk or it's a horrible view, then I wouldn't take it. But as long as the basics are good, then it's about how you commit to a place and the love that you show for it. And I'm sure you as a writer know that you can turn up in a room and think, oh God, do I have to live here and do my work here? And in the first few days, it's horrible. But at the time you've finished your work and move on, you're really fond of the broken knife and the one cup and the dodgy bath. And it's like you soon, at least I soon thought, if I commit to a place, I soon start to fall in love with it. And in fact, I was lucky. It was very nice. But there's lots of beautiful places in Jamaica. But I just picked one and I said, this is my spot. I'm just going to sit here and see what happens and get to know them and get the trust of them, because there's a big trust issue. I'm English. They've got a beef with the English, and a very fair one. We fucked them. We really fucked them over with slavery and then colonization. So to get their trust, it takes 20 years of them watching me very closely and me not making a mistake, or not. If I do make a mistake, I go and say, I'm sorry, I must have mucked up here.
So how are you perceived there now, especially having written about the place?
They're cool with me now. I think when the book first came out, they didn't really know that I was a writer, so they were a bit surprised. It wasn't in Cove; they didn't really pick it up, as I knew they wouldn't, because in Cove, in those days, they didn't really read and write. Only the exceptionally clever children read and write in the country of Jamaica, because the education system is not very well funded. But also, there is another very clever trick that the colonizers did, which was then given to the middle classes who ran Jamaica after the English left in the 60s, which was they have two languages there. They have their own language, Patwa, and then they have the English language. And what they do is they do all examinations and all teaching in the English language, which is a language that the working people don't speak unless you're extremely clever. So they would go to school and be taught history, for instance, in English, but they didn't fully understand the English unless they came from an English-speaking household, which is basically the rich people in Kingston and the cities. And so it kept all of the jobs and all of the power in the hands of the people who could speak English and excluded those who couldn't, which means that there's a huge amount of talent not being given any access to any political power, because they can't read and write. But of course, that explains why their music industry is so powerful, because all of that talent only have one other, but they have no movie industry, or very, very small one. That talent really, its easiest and best expression is made in music. And so a lot of people who I think would be politicians, who would be writers, who would be actors, directors, they're all singers. I mean, you just have to pick up a microphone. That is your way out, and they become DJs, because that is the only way of doing it if you cannot read or write. But I actually run a campaign called Speak Properly, Chat Patwa, to try and encourage them to think about making Patwa a more official language, to enfranchise very, very unfortunate people who are given forms to fill in by the government or banks, which in a language which they've never been taught. They don't even have English lessons at school. It's so brutal, it's so unjust.
I saw something very similar in Malta as well. I lived in Malta for a number of years, and
So,
there's
so did I.
yeah, really. Where did you live?
I lived in a place called just south of the airport in a very pretty castle. It was called Babakra.
I lived near there in
Babakra.
Zaytun, and
Right,
then
right. Yeah.
in a village not far from where you were, yeah, called Zuri, where the Blue Grotto is and all that. Kind of up on the edge of this village, but it's very similar there in the sense that the cultural divide between English speakers and Maltese speakers and the differences in education. It's very political now as well. Like the languages are linked to different political parties, but you can see how this was really used to drive a wedge within that society too.
Yes, and I'm sure basically where the English were the colonizers, I suspect it went on. And one of the colonized countries has really done something about it, which is Wales, who have finally got recognition for their language as an official government language, and has got money for TV stations, and it's properly supported now, and it's been very good for Wales. And I often point that out to my Jamaican friends when they go, "It's impossible. We should forget Patwa and move up in the world and just become an English-speaking country." Well, when I say to them, "Look, man, the thing you're most famous for is your patois outside. The thing that you're ashamed of is the thing that we all love about it. What you think that we're listening to Bob Marley because of his wonderful English? We're not. We're listening to Bob Marley because he says no woman, no cry, and we have to work the syntax out, and it's a lovely language. Don't be ashamed of it." But they really, the rich ones are ashamed of it. It's so silly. It's so silly. Anyway, hopefully it'll change.
Yeah, so much of the culture is rooted in this, in language, and then the perceptions of the world. It's a great strength. I wanted to ask you about that, actually. So what's your organization? What are they doing? What are its goals? Do you lobby the governments, or how do you go about this?
Well, yeah, this is Speak Properly, Chat Patwa. I tell you, talk about a brick wall. I mean, I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll send this to Mutabaruka, and we'll send out a little press release here and there, and people will pick up on this. But it's been really hard to get people, to get them to believe. I say to them, your Prime Minister, Holness, Bro God, they called him, because he's like one of the people, and he's also God, Bro God. I said, when he goes to the United Nations and he makes his speech, I said, when the French president goes to the United Nations, Monsieur Macron, he doesn't speak in English. He can speak English perfectly well. He speaks in French, and he says, "Get me a translator." And people go, that's his language. He's French. That's what he speaks in. And Brogod should go to Jamaica, and until this happens, my work will not be done, and speaks in Patwa to the United Nations, and they have a translator who translates it into English or French or German or whatever language the people need it in. But they were like, that would be the most shameful thing for Jamaica, to have someone's representing us speaking Patwa. So it's a huge mental, cultural. And I said, no, that is freeing yourself of mental slavery. That is exactly what Bob Marley was saying. But anyway, they think I'm an idiot. But I do think that in 20 or 30 years, maybe 40 years, I hope that it will be more widely used, because it's really bad for the poor people, for the working people.
So how does it work in reverse? Like, how do people respond if an outsider attempts to speak Patois when they come to Jamaica?
Them love it. Them happy love it. Them happy love it. And even if you try for whole meds, if you try to reason with them, and even if you don't get it right, they're really pleased to see you giving it a whirl, and very surprised. I don't know much about languages, but I know that Patois isn't really one language. It's a sort of spectrum of a language, in that you can speak it like Bob Marley and be very plainly understood by most English speakers, or you can go much, much, much deeper. And there are many, many stops on the way. So I can have a conversation where they're using some Patois, but they will just make it so it's understandable for me. But if their friend walks in the room and they want to say something private, they'll just drop down a couple of steps, or up. I don't know why I say down, or just ascend a couple of notches on the language scale, and they'll now be saying something like this. Unless I hear it back, it's very hard for me to understand. so it was a language a lot about secrecy. It's a lot about, they use that language to prevent people understanding it during times of slavery and colonization, because they had to be able to talk to each other without the enslavers and the colonizers understanding what's going on. I suspect, I make that up, but that's my working theory. But I always like to have a chat with them, and I'm not very good at it. But I do say, why are there no Patwa lessons? If you go to Catalan, you can get free Catalan lessons. If you go to Wales, you can get free Welsh lessons on the government. There should be Patwa classes, so people like me can go and learn the grammar. I mean, I asked them, so I try and work the grammar. There isn't a grammar. There are no history books written in Patwa. There's like it's completely uncodified, the language. That's one of the reasons why it's a bit difficult to write in it, because there is no code. There is no dictionary. No one's written a dictionary.
It's a really good idea. I mean, they have cooking lessons to think of a way to bring the tourism resort types into the local community. I mean, people would be thrilled to take this home with them.
That's such a good idea, Ron. And I've never used that because I've been so stonewalled. All of my suggestions, and they looked at like I'm I want to drag Jamaica down into the mud. Whenever I talk on this subject, they'll go, "Why do you want to take us backwards?" But actually, some Patwa lessons. I could maybe arrange this. Because the people I've got a real bugbear with the all-inclusives. I absolutely hate the all-inclusive hotels. But one of the things they are allowed is they are allowed on certain tours or to go to certain approved events. So maybe I could get someone from my village to do a Patwa afternoon or a Patwa day where you're taught some phrases and you sign up and you come, and I mean, that'd be a good idea. And they come and they sit around the yard and someone teaches them some, the basics.
So how was it received then that you wrote so much of the book in dialect in Patwa? I mean, obviously you weren't accused of cultural appropriation like you would be today.
I'm not really sensitive to being accused of cultural appropriation. I don't think it's a very interesting. I don't think it's a very interesting distinction. Certainly, if you live amongst the Jamaicans, you listen to their music for 2 minutes, you can see they're taking from whoever they want, whenever they want, and all that matters is does it work out well at the end? Is it any good at the end? Is it offensive? If it's offensive, it's obviously that's not right. But I think to get hung up on it is a big mistake. And I'm not hung up on it at all. There are many ways of rendering reality, many, many ways. But having a stab at the way they talk, at their language, is completely legitimate. It's no less legitimate than describing a tree or describing their dancing or my dancing. It's just reality. And I just think cultural appropriation, people who get upset about that, they're angry about something else. I understand it. They're angry that their culture has not worked out very well for them. But it's not the thing for me. It's that's no reason to start going at someone else's. Big up your own culture. Get into it yourself. Stop saying it's not fair. You're borrowing it. Make yourself proud of it. And certainly, if you said to a Jamaican, just explaining the concept cultural appropriation, like trans rights, or even the Me Too movement, to be honest, is a fair challenge in my bar in Cousins Cove. But obviously, I talk about everything with them. I do talk about cultural appropriation, but it's just the blank looks I get when I say people get a bit upset if you use some, their language or their clothes or a hairstyle. Just like, how can that be a problem? Who gives a shit about that? How can that be a problem? And I'm with them, and certainly they'll take whatever they want. If Kenny Rogers, what they need, they'll just take, and they'll sample what they want, and they won't ask permission. And if someone says, that's not yours to do it, have it out with them, because they'll say we have equal claim to what we want in the world. I mean, culturally and intellectually, and I'm absolutely with them. And people who put those barriers up and lay claim to a culture are people who are disappointed in. I don't know. It's not worked out well for them. It's like only mean people really. Only mean people don't like lending. If you're cool, you lend your stuff. You've got a hammer, you lend it if someone asks for it. You don't go, that's my hammer, you shouldn't be using it. You go, come on, hammers all round. Let's get hammering. And if I do annoy people, good. totally good. They deserve to be annoyed. Bring it on. They absolutely can't scare me. And if the idea that I have to kind of run what I write past some little committee, normally of some white person in a basement in England, bring it on. Go on, do your worst, mate, because I'm not scared. And if you really want to talk about it, come to Jamaica. I'll take you to a bar in Jamaica, and you have your little, tiny intellectual argument with them, because they will not know what you're talking about. Now, I know that's not the whole end of the story, and there are many flaws in my argument, because it's the same really with, as I say, the trans rights. It's like totally blows the Jamaicans away. I mean, they just do not. I mean, they're still. They say they're still homophobic. They are very homophobic, but they're kind of not homophobic as well. It's their homophobia is. It could be there should be sociologists looking at their homophobia, because where it's come from, what it's really about, and how it plays out are so unlike what you think as you arrive and you think you're going to a homophobic society, because there are many gay people in my community operating absolutely, as far as I can see, fairly openly, but they're just like not noticed by anyone. And I'm like thinking, well, I guess I don't know, but I in Britain, I would assume that person was gay. I don't say anything. I just keep quiet. It's not my business. But you hear them, and I go, it's not really about gay people that you're angry with, because there are lots of gay people here. It's obvious that they're gay people here, and they're fine. I say they're fine. There are many, many acts of violence against them. I don't really know where I'm going with this, Ron, but it ain't. My favorite quote in the whole world is from Cole Porter, and it's, "The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, they ain't necessarily so." And whenever I'm told this is how it is, I always think, well, it ain't necessarily so. And definitely in Jamaica, I look at life and I think a lot of the things I've been taught, it ain't necessarily so. There's another way of looking at it. So as for rendering Patwa, I'm really glad that I've done it. And I'm really glad that some people don't like it. And I'm really glad that lots of people do like it. And, and I wish more people would write Patwa.
It came across to me more as an attempt to reflect that culture on its own terms. This is how culture works. We borrow from each other. We take ideas from different people. We share and exchange. And it's a flattering thing. It's not. It's not an exploitative
Well, I hope
thing.
not. We have an American guy. I don't know if you know him. He's called Bill Bryson. Do you know Bill?
Yeah.
Who comes to England and goes around England and takes the piss out of us and writes them in a book and sells millions of copies of these books. He just goes around. He's really rude about us. He's a funny writer. I've never met him, but he's a funny writer. And he gets and no one really says, Bill, why do we allow this man, Bill Bryson, to come and ridicule us in this kind of accurate way? But if a white person does it to a predominantly black culture, people are a little bit more touchy about it, but I'm not. I don't think that colour's got anything to do with it. I mean, it's not like I ever would deny the history. I'm really, really open about the history and about my very odd position of being a white person going back to this place where these terrible things happened. But I'm going from the point that I'm at now. I can't undo that. But I'm celebrating them totally. So I love them. You can tell from my books that I absolutely adore living there. I spend more and more time in Jamaica. Makes me feel young.
We should talk about the book, actually. So One People is a work of fiction set in real villages and inspired by real characters. And you've described Cousins Cove as a little Eden made more interesting by the fall. What do you mean by that?
Well, in that it does look very paradisical. And I always thought that the Garden of Eden, pretty to look at, hang around with for a bit, but eventually be quite boring before the snake and the apple turned up. That's the bit where the story kind of warms up for me. And indeed for the rest of the world, because that's the beginning of the Bible, but how long were Adam and Eve there? But before the snake and the apple, we don't know, but it's not that interesting. Two people being really happy in a beautiful place. But there is blood in the soil from slavery, and there's really negligent governments. And there are ways of sorting out disputes which are are really dangerous and unsociable. There's a sort of roughness about them, which is completely understandable, which makes life quite. You got to keep on your toes there. You've got to keep on your toes in everything that you do. You got to keep on your toes. You got to watch yourself. You got to conduct yourself well. When I'm there, for instance, road rage is not something that I ever is a luxury that I do not indulge in Jamaica. Someone cuts me up. First thing that comes on my face is a smile. As they go right across my bonnet or pull some outrageous maneuver, which they do in front of me. First thing I do is smile and put my hand out and say, "Please, sir, go through." In Britain, I'm like shaking my fist and swearing at them, because you've got to be careful. You do not want to get into a dispute with them. I do not want to get into dispute with them. So it keeps me on my toes. I quite like that about it, actually. There's a phrase they have, it's a tansa back, which is a really important phrase to know. And when a man comes to you and pulls a knife out, comes towards you and pulls a knife out of the pocket, you put your hand straight in your pocket and pull out a packet of cigarettes and offer him one of those. And that's called tansa back. And that's my mode when I'm in Jamaica.
Well, I really like the way you set it up, actually. You talked about these sorts of differences between, Eden before and after the fall. You described a neighboring village where people, worked hard and they were industrious and they tidied up their place and they got ahead. And then you said, yeah, we're not talking about these people. We're talking about these other lazy, shiftless people over here.
Yeah. Lance's Bay. They're still like that. I went there the other day. I said, with my palette, I want to go and see if Lance's Bay's changed in the last 20 years. But they're really ambitious. They have more returnees from America too, and they're ambitious to make their village less slack, more, basically more American and suburban. That's the real danger to Jamaica is the American suburbs. Particularly, it's also a really good development. I don't want to be totally negative about it, because they're also bringing very good values as well. Hard work, abiding by the law, getting a license before you drive, or all the things that we sort of do naturally, that they are bringing to Jamaica, and it could do with a bit of it. Not too much. I don't want it to completely homogenized and just turned into an American state. That would be very sad. But I don't think that's likely to happen. I don't think that they're likely to go down that easily. Certainly, Ryan, when I first went there in the 80s, when the American influence was really taking over from the British influence after the end of colonization, I remember thinking, I'm seeing the end of a culture here. This is about to be Americanized. And the interface between the Jamaican culture and the American, it would be the American that came off at the better, and the Jamaicans would suffer. But it ain't necessarily so, as I said before, because exactly the reverse happened, and that Jamaicans became a massive cultural influence in America, with their music, with their relationships, with the language, and America. Well, it has affected Jamaica, but not a great deal. Not a great deal.
I mean, nobody wants to read about those kinds of places either. The perfect village where everybody's industrious. It's not an interesting story.
No.
In comparison to a place like Cousins Cove.
I loved Lake Wobegon, because he was writing about one community. It's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon. I think, is that how they all start? But and he just writes about one little village. I think he's a really good writer, Garrison Keillor. He's been swept up in the Me Too movement. He's been swept up. He's been accused of some kind of sexual shenanigans, and he's been quietly sort of disappeared. I seem to think. And I was telling my Jamaican friends, because I was reading the report. I said, "Come and listen to this," and I listened to what he had been accused of. And I'm not going to quote it because I don't want to get it wrong anyway. But to the Jamaicans, it was like, hold on, is this guy's rich? I go, yeah, he's rich. He's like rich white guy. He's quite famous too. And they go, this surely is not, you cannot really be getting exercised about this. So I go, well, that we are, and it's coming your way. It's, believe you me, guys, this is coming your way. And here's the thing, Ryan, that was probably about 6 years ago. But I haven't noticed Jamaica change. I said, this is going to change you. This is going to change you. But once again, they are showing that they are very resistant. to outside influences. Then I thought maybe actually we have reached the high tide of those movements, which we think is a continuum. It's just going to become, the genders are going to become more and more fluid, and the rights of women around sex are going to get more and more powerful, and that we're on this road going that way. But I think when I go to Jamaica, I think maybe it's not a straight road from here to kind of woke heaven. Maybe it's got a curve on it, and maybe it's going to come right back to, to Jamaica, basically, where they're saying there's some animal in you, woman and man, and don't forget it. You cannot cage it. You cannot get rid of it. And you can't do it all with your head. At least I think that's what they're saying. That's what the dance hall guys seem to be saying. That's what Vibes is saying. There's some animal in me, and that's the bit of me that I really like. And there's some animal in that woman, and that's the bit I like. And that's the bit that she likes about me. That's what they seem to be saying. And I'm saying to them, it's getting more and more unacceptable. Your lyrics. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a shit. I say these songs, you would, if you played them in an English pub, you would get arrested. I mean, it's almost a criminal offense. I'm not talking about the homophobic ones. And in fact, the homophobic ones there are many fewer of them in Jamaica, I'm pleased to say. But just the straight sexual, just the straight pum-pum songs are so outrageous. And you hear, you in a bar, and there's like 8-year-old child listening to them. And mummy and granny and the boys, and like these obscene lyrics about heterosexual sex. And I say to them, this is like, and whenever I'm there, I'm thinking, this is how many more cultures are there going to be where this is going to be listenable to? But it doesn't seem to be going.
Well, I don't think the rest of the world is that way. The rest of the world is not woke by any stretch, and has zero chance of becoming that way. I mean, outside these northern English-speaking countries, like I spent a lot of time in Japan, and none of this took off there either.
Well, the thing is, you actually travel. I just go to one. I don't travel at all. I go to one place. I only know one tiny place. So you don't think that because I'm under the impression, reading my liberal English newspapers, that basically the game's over and they've won. And the things that used to be able to be said are basically being phased out. And the people who said them are being phased out. You don't think that?
I think in the places heavily influenced by Western culture and Western education, it definitely feels that way. I mean, Western Europe, I live in Germany. It feels quite a lot like that here, especially Berlin is very leftist. But the rest of the world go to Africa or go to the Middle East, or nobody takes these things seriously. I find they often wonder, why are we destroying our own culture? Why are we not proud of the good things of our cultural legacy? Why are we pretending that people are not human in exactly the ways you just described?
Yeah. It's tricky because I don't want to be dismissive in a kind of right-wing old fogey, where I want to be sensitive about this. It requires thought, but I keep coming back to like, what on earth are we doing? This doesn't make sense to me.
No, yeah. At the more extreme edges, it seems to have just gone off the rails, and we've forgotten our own humanity. I mean, you can kind of see some of this in the pandemic, where the idea that we can, if we just lock ourselves in the house, we'll be forever safe from our own mortality, which is just an illusion,
And particularly in the Jamaican context, our own sexuality, because Ryan, when you're in Jamaica, I don't know if it's true of other countries, there is like this sort of like a 4-bar radiator of sex coming basically off almost everyone. I mean, not, I'm going to have sex with you, but I'm a sexual person. And it's okay for me to show you I'm a sexual person. And I'm not offended by you being sexual towards me. It's not saying touching or raping. I'm not saying that, but just being sexual. The woman who comes round, she was coming round to organize the spraying of my house for duck ants because I had a lot of termites. I was eating all the wood. She arrives, and she I've never met her before. This is a professional walking in, and she will say, you're looking good, you're handsome, you're like black woman. And it's like the first thing she says, which was, I said, that's so unacceptable. You can't say that. I said, you'll be fired for saying that, or I would be in terrible trouble. She said, no, tell me what kind of woman you like. I have lots of friends, And I go, look, we're talking about the termites, but it's not. it's not offensive on either side. But they're just like, they know that there's lots of sex in them, and there's lots of sex in you, or lots of sex in lots of people, and they're just open about it. But I certainly have to massively recalibrate when I come back to Britain. It's not the kind of remark that you can say.
No, our culture's killed this kind of good-natured flirting, this fun, constant,
Absolutely.
not a battle between the sexes, but this dynamic. It's so enjoyable.
It's absolutely, and they are masters of the art, absolutely master of the art of flirting, and of it being fun and not weird or rapey. Everyone getting a chance to join in a nice, in a really workable way. And so many people will be offended by what I just said, but it's true. You can be 75. I've often seen a man of 75 walking into a bar and a little twinkle in their eye and having a little tiny, saying something, flattering, or something a little joke to the bartender, which would be considered which would be like a problem. It would be a problem in Britain if a man did it to her. But the bartender takes it on the chin and has a laugh and makes a little remark back to him, and it's so much more. It's just so much more sexual. That they didn't have it rubbed out of them by the Victorians or the Edwardians or by post-war austerity or by the church. In fact, and of course it was, I think it may probably have quite a tragic source, because I suspect that during slavery, because it cost £80 to bring an African person over to Kingston as a slave, that's what they paid for them. They were very keen to try and have as many born as they could on their plantations. So I suspect that the guys who owned the plantations, who were in charge of the system, devised a culture whereby there was a lot of shagging, because that was how they were going to keep these women pregnant. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. This was a financial operation. I mean, you think of Auschwitz. Auschwitz went on for 4 years. This was a process that went on for 200 years. It was a well-bedded in system of abusing human beings for commercial reasons. But certainly going around and shagging a lot of people in my village is a high-status activity. Even now, it's a high-status activity. There's no question about it. And there is absolutely no shame to any woman ever being pregnant, ever. Abortion, although it's gone a little bit higher, it's still pretty low there. It's very easily available, but still a lot of babies produced, and it's always a matter of joy and celebration in the village. Whereas in Britain, a girl of 17 or 18 getting pregnant, I think there might be some shame around it if she wasn't married.
How much of that easy open sexuality comes from being in tropical places?
Well, that's one of the things. You're all walking around in your shorts and your t-shirt, right, and everything, and you can see, everyone. But they certainly lean into it, Ryan. I mean, there's the party up my road called Lingerie Party, where the 200 women turn up literally in their knickers and bra. The men naturally are all fully dressed. And I remember standing there, my friend going, this is really hard to believe that this is like, and again, it's not like a kind of seedy thing that goes on in some funky bar in Berlin. This is out on the road with children, grannies, dogs, everyone there, just, exuberant. And it's, as I say, to me, it does not feel rapey. It does not feel weird. It does not feel that anyone is there under coercion. To me, I don't know, I could be wrong. It looks to me like a really lovely celebration of this is who we are. Look at our amazing bodies, fat, thin, everything in between. Just like, this is who we are. Let's live before we die.
Another thing that I really felt from your book too was the resonance with sort of small towns everywhere. Everybody's got a nickname that they've sort of been anchored to them through some exploits. I came from a very small town, and it was a bit like that. I mean, the exploits were different, but the way some crazy incident would anchor your personality, and you'd just be forever known as like you, Roy, or whatever.
Multiple names have a very important function, because you know me as Guy, but so for my culture, I have one name for everyone, but they will have a name that they were born with, which is their government name, which will never, ever really be heard again, whatever it is, Clive Johnson, Hyacinth Anglin, that is their government name. Then they have the name that they're called in their family. Then they have another name, which is a community name, which is often either something that they've done, as you say, or some physical, as Shorty, Blackie, or as you say, if they've been involved in a story which the whole community knows about, they'll get a name from that story. And then they have another name for their very close friends. And so when you're sitting with a Jamaican in a bar or anywhere, and someone walks up and says hello to the person you're with, you can tell from the name they use how close they are to them. So it's giving off a signal all the time that these people are in this political group or in this social group, and these people are in an outer ring and an outer ring and an outer ring, because their sensitivity about territory and about who controls the territory around them is hyper acute, much more acute than from my culture. So when you say that someone's called Uroy, they are called Uroy, and there is actually someone called Uroy, and it was because that he put on a concert. He decided to put on a promoter, and he promoted the singer Uroy, but he didn't actually book him. So when the night came and all the people turned up, he decided that the only way out of it was to impersonate Uroy on the stage. Only, I get very good sound. It was a Jamaican, but overconfidence, extreme overconfidence, because they didn't really have any stage lighting in those days. You just had one bulb over the stage, and he had a hat, and he just thought he could somehow pull off in front of a Jamaican audience, pull off impersonating a major star. Anyway, it went wrong, but. So the people who used that name knew that story, and that again defined another social grouping. People who had been involved in that and had watched that night and knew that night. So their names are really about overlapping groups and narratives that some people know about and other people don't. And it's always defining the groups the groups that they move in. It's a beautiful thing when you start seeing it and new names emerging. And I know the story how that name emerged. And when I call that person that name, they know I'm referring to that part of their life. And the other people around immediately know that I'm a trusted figure, or that I'm intimate enough with him to know that, so they can relax with me being around. So I'm sending off signals by using those names, because if I don't know their names, everyone's antennae are up when a white man walks into the bar. Who the hell's he? What's he up to?
That's very interesting. So it immediately places you as an insider in this community, despite being an obvious outsider or foreigner.
An insider in a certain group, Ron. So there'll be other groups I'm not in, and some that they are, so they can judge exactly where I fit in. They use their names to show where they fit in.
So to go back to you, Roy, for a second, it's for people who don't know, this is one of the stories in the book and why you should read it, because it's just full of stories like this. But the funny thing about that to me as well was that he only knew one of the guy's songs. He thought he could just make it up on the spot and bluff his way through.
It has so much about Jamaica that I now look back on it, and that amazing confidence. From when I as this thing started on, and as I started learning about this, there were so many points at which I said, but surely didn't he realize what was going to happen, or how would he think about doing such a thing? But they were like, no, he was quite good actually. But he only knew one song. It's going to be a problem, as a good crowd there waiting for an entire gig. But anyway, it's still a famous story. There are some lovely legends there, kind of modern legends. One of them, which is not in this book actually, is about that. There's a very pretty island just off Negril, very pretty little island, which the tourists go to, and they're constantly selling it to American tourists. I mean, it's owned by the Jamaican government. It's not for sale under anywhere. It's protected, but it's a very pretty little private island, probably about an acre. And they take the tourists out there, and they somehow manage to make the tourists believe that they can buy the island for way less than it's worth, and take a few $1,000s off them, and these poor people think that they bought the island. And there are so many holes in the story as to how they could possibly do this. But somehow in Jamaica, they just pull these things off. They just do these things. They're so much more daring. I don't know.
And one of the other things about those stories too is that everybody's got some kind of grand scheme, but it doesn't matter if you actually pulled it off or even attempted the scheme. It was enough to just have this idea, then you could be credited with this.
Absolutely. Well, it's a bit like the signage. They love a sign, but they never read a sign. A lot of the people in my community, they don't read very well, but they certainly don't read a sign. They don't read T-shirts either, but they wear T-shirts with words on them. But they don't really care what the words say because they're not really reading them. They're looking at other things which we don't look at. They're noticing many things that we don't notice, but I'm noticing all the words. And one of the things about the bars is that they put a bar up and then they immediately put some signs up, which are like fresh coffee. Never, under any circumstances, can you get fresh coffee in Jamaica. Fried fish, yes, fried fish sometimes, maybe once or twice. Open. They put paint open onto a door, which spends nearly all its time closed. They love a sign. They're great joiners in it. They're great joiner-inners. They love to join in. It's so much less codified and less organized than Britain. It can get a bit chaotic. I love that. I was brought up in a very tightly controlled way. And so it feels like a great release to be out there where, it doesn't matter if you're late. It doesn't matter if you're stoned. It doesn't matter if you're having a drink at 10 in the morning. Nobody gives a shit. No, more than that, you're celebrated for it. He's late. He's late. It's magnificent. It's fantastic. How late are you? It's great. You know what I mean? It's like live before you die.
There are a couple instances where the stories involve foreigners, but they seem to divide into like the credulous and the suspicious. So you have this couple who bought Sandra's house. They hire a caretaker, Vincent, and when they're away, he's under no circumstances must you go into this room. Of course he goes into the room. He invites girls over. They use the house as a party place. But then when the people come back, everything's all tidied up in a way, and it's as if it never happened. You've got that side, and then you've got the suspicious, like this American, a New Yorker, was he called Brian?
Yeah.
The survivalist and guerrilla warfare expert who's just suspicious of everybody.
Yeah.
What do outsiders get wrong about Jamaica?
It's such a good question, that. I love that question. I'm going to talk really about myself. It's what I got wrong. I think it's better if I talk about it because I actually know about myself, whereas I have no idea about other people. I'm only guessing. Because of maybe the Jamaican Tourist Board's very convincing advertising, you get the feeling that they're absolutely dying to meet you and come in any way, it's going to be absolutely fine. And to some extent, they are very welcoming. But underneath that is some history, which they know very well about. They may not know that many details, but they know about it. And if you ignore that, then you're going to get very disappointed or you're going to get very confused. So I have lots of friends, I have a few friends who have houses out there. And, normally while they're away, or a car, for instance, if you leave a car there, they'll find a way of starting it and using it as a village taxi, in your absence, which, is actually very annoying. But at the same time, they feel, in my opinion, that they're slightly owed it. That, you just cannot come to Jamaica and just take what you want and fuck off. They're like, it's our time now. So it's going to be on our terms, on their terms. And as long as you're prepared to do it on their terms, which can be very annoying and quite expensive, it's beautiful. But don't go there thinking that there isn't a debt that they're owed. They were the most enslaved country. Those people went through absolute utter hell in not only in slavery but then in colonization. They've had a very rough ride from the English, particularly. Not so the Canadians or really the Americans so much, but the English have given them a very rough ride, and you need to respect that. They don't want to talk about it all the time, but I always respect it. If in doubt, I buy people a drink and look after them, because I feel as our politicians will do nothing about reparations. that it's up to me to on a personal level, to at least start making a small dent in the huge bill that they're rightfully demanding be settled.
In terms of sort of freedom with other people's things, that's something you described as being part of the village as well, though, right? Like if there's a hammer, it's like the village hammer. People just pick it up and use it when they need it and pass it on to the next person. So do you think that extends to, or the way Vincent approached the home of these people that he was the caretaker for?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Because I mean, private property, far as I can see, is a fairly modern idea there. A fairly modern idea, and even now in 2022, got a guy who came around to fix my speaker box, and he had a little sachet, a sort of plastic bag with loads of little screwdrivers, electronic screwdrivers in it. And I looked at it, I said, "Well, that's nice." He said, "Don't tell anybody I have that, because they will all want to borrow them." And I said to him, "Is it hard to say no if they come to borrow them?" He said, "Yeah, you can't say no. I can't say no." He said, better that they don't know I've got it. And you have to share. There's not enough in the village for everything not to be shared. Although the values of capitalism in America, and the suburban America particularly, are edging into that, what is basically straight communism, but people are being persuaded, and there's more money around, so more people have their own hammer. But still, if they hear a lawnmower going and their lawn needs a cut, they all just wander straight over and say, "Me beg you lawnmower," and they'll just drive it over. And I just see sometimes when I'm driving through, I see my lawnmower miles from my house, and I go back. And I go to my housekeeper, "What the fuck? My lawnmower, I just seen it, like, it's not," I said, "It's the people around here, I understand that, but this was like 2 miles away. I've just seen the lawnmower." She said, "Yes, it was a problem. They run out of gas. They can't mow their lawn." So I said it would be okay. So I said, "All right, it's okay." And of course, that message goes that far, that the guy lent his lawnmower up there. That message goes there. And nothing is ever said to me. They don't come and say thank you. No way. You're lucky to get the lawnmower back, but it comes back. But I know that when I'm in that area, I don't know it like, I know it, but it's there that I'm a man who came up with a lawnmower when they needed it badly. Roots me deeper into it. Roots everyone deeper into it. It's kind of annoying and amazing at the same time.
Yeah, like any small community, I know there's massive annoyances because everybody knows your business and is quite free with it. But then at the same time, it's something you don't experience in a big city like where I live now. You
live in Berlin now, do you?
Yeah.
A bit hip.
Not in this neighborhood, actually. I did live in a really cool neighborhood, but we now live in kind of a working class factory sort of district. It's like my hometown except German almost.
Is your partner German?
No, she's Japanese.
Oh, really? We get some Japanese in Jamaica. In fact,
yeah. What do the Japanese think of it?
Wow. Well, I don't know much about Japanese culture, but I have this idea that it's almost the complete opposite in so
yes,
of the Jamaican. And but we have some Japanese music enthusiasts, and they know. And they come to some of the, I see them at the shows. And I don't go to a lot of shows. It's like too chaotic and noisy, but sometimes I do. And I see Japanese all there, and they definitely come, and they know the music. They're like a lot of the music fans from Germany as well. They're interested in slightly older music from maybe 60s and 70s, which is very hard to find in Jamaica. It must be so disappointing to them, because they get to Jamaica, they're not interested in old hits. They're only interested in absolutely what's going on now. And it's not like our cultures where we're like beginning to look at our musical heritage, pop music heritage. There's none of that. You're right up to date. Everybody is Vibes Cartel. That's where everyone is. And they don't play. Well, they do, but not very much. You hardly see them live acts, but the Japanese do come. And what is so great is that one of these Japanese who loves the music is also a really good sushi chef, and he has opened a sushi restaurant in Kingston, which is I know a little bit about Japanese food from living in London, but it is really good, and he is such a nice guy. But I watch him trying to get them to deal with his food and to just to deal with getting it from the counter to the table and work out. And he's done it really well. It's such a good restaurant. But I do think, my God, how did he get the Jamaicans to do this? Because they are so chauvinist about food and raw fish. No, me no bother with that. No, me no deal with that. I go, just try it. Just try one bit. No, you can't do that, Guy. You can't do that. That fish you have to fry, And I go, no, you don't have to fry it, actually. You don't have to fry fish. You can do other things to fish. But anyway, so there is this really cool Japanese restaurant now. I really love it.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you actually about tourism as well. Dervla Murphy said that the theory that tourism helps the local economy is complete bullshit. I mean, do you agree with that? And what do you think has been the impact in Jamaica of mass tourism?
Well, thank you for asking me this, because I've got a lovely new theory here. I think that that when the all-inclusive in Jamaica devised the all-inclusive. Okay, very typically Jamaican. It's a vicious economic model where you commodify tourists, you keep them encaged. It's got quite a lot of links to slavery, actually, in that everyone's all kept in this confined area and there's no money around. And there's some weird reflections of controlling a group. In slavery, it was controlling a group to exploit them with absolutely no regard for their feelings or rights. But the tourists, they do have some regard. They're trying to make them have a good time. And in fact, they're quite successful. Some tourists really like it. But when they arrived, they're predicated on the idea that you cannot trust any staff with cash, because there's no cash inside these all-inclusives. But they arrived, and Butch Stewart was the king of them, who runs Sandals. He's died recently. A lot of my community went to work in them. They were like, because they're quite close to where I live. In fact, they're building one very close to where I live right as I talk. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. But he paid the staff inside the hotel pretty well. And he allowed, the ancillary workers in tourism in my village are the drug dealers and the prostitutes, and all of them could get a bit of action on the edge of the all-inclusives. But over the years, they have kept the people. They've tightened their grip on the freedom of the people inside the all-inclusive hotels, and they do not allow them out except under kind of armed guard. And it's extremely bad for the reputation of Jamaica, because it looks like they've got something to be scared of out there. In fact, what they're doing is they're controlling them as an economic unit, so they can send them to the bars of their mates and to the tourist attractions of their mates, the lame tourist attractions and the shit bars, because they're all taken to the worst places because they're told that they're the safe places, and that's where they do the business. So their tourist experience is, in my opinion, meager, and it's very bad for the reputation of Jamaica, that you can't just walk out of a hotel because it's too dangerous. It's not too dangerous. It's absolutely fine. But there's another effect that it has by bringing all these English-speaking people into the area of West Jamaica, where there's no education, was that it taught a whole generation of Jamaicans to speak American English and to watch Americans and to study Americans and look at their habits and their values. And those two things were what then powered. That was like the university, which made the graduates who became the scammers. And scamming, which is a massive, I cannot overestimate how huge the scamming industry is in West Jamaica. In fact, it's just easing off now. The last 20 years, 15 years, has been totally about scamming. There's been it's even made tourism look quite small, the amount of money that's being pouring into Jamaica. And they were absolutely brilliant at getting on the phone and bullshitting and lying and talking these Americans into sending down money under completely false pretenses. And they learned those skills at the hotels, because it only happened in Western Jamaica. That's where scamming. There was no scamming in Kingston. There was no telephone scamming in Kingston. There was no telephone scamming in Montego Bay. It was all in the little villages where I lived. And they're dotted around there was this absolute gold rush. It's the amount of money that was coming through. This is in 2003, 2004, 2005, up to about 2008, and then when the government really had to start doing something about it. absolutely millions of dollars came through.
So what kind of scams? Give me an example.
Well, the lottery scam was invented in Jamaica, which is where, hello, you've won $865,344 on the lottery. Good news. And there's a handling fee of $100. So if you just send that down, we'll give us your account numbers and it'll be in your account by 4:00 this afternoon. You know, that was the ground zero scam, and they proved to be really good at it. And they then developed loads and loads of variations of it, and quite Byzantine, you know, how where they got to the sort of things they would end up doing. And it also proliferated all over the world because lots of people saw quite easy way of making money. But it's now moved much more onto email and onto the computer. So it's doesn't require language. So it's not such a big business now. But we were the global center of excellence for about 10 years of the telephone scamming industry. And that was entirely because they put those hotels there. It would never have happened without those hotels, because it's only where the hotels are that it's really good. That's it. Well, in my opinion, good, because again, I put it in the context of reparations, and so do they. They say to me, I say to them, it's a bit of a heavy way of earning money, nicking it from old ladies, teeth from old ladies, and they go, no, we're not teeth. We reclaim stolen property. Everything they have, they take from black people. And all we're doing is we're just taking back what they owe us, but they won't pay us. They said, get them to pay us in reparations, and then we won't. But we are reclaiming stolen property. And one said, you should write a book about me. He's the big kind of Pablo Escobar of scammers, who I've known since he was a child, multimillionaire. He should write my book. I said, no, I don't write books to order. And I don't write books to order. It's not something. I said, you can get on the internet and find someone to do it. I'm not doing it. He came back 2 or 3 times and said, no, I really want you to write this book. I want you to tell my story, because we're people think we're bad and people think we're awful, but they don't see that actually we're the saviors, and we're only doing to them what they did to us. And you lot all do it. Anyway, so I said, I'm not doing it. And the reason I'm not doing it is because in the end, I don't think I can ever get a reader to really sympathize with someone who takes money from old ladies, because in the end, you are a scammer. And he said to me, yeah, Guy, you white people, you came down to Africa and then you come to Jamaica and you bring with you a book, and you say your book is written by God. And he said, in that book, God says that you should be the masters and we should be the slaves. So I went a bit sheepish. Yeah, okay. He said, and you call me a scammer.
So will you write more stories about Jamaica?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. It's got to be good, though. And it's got to be a reason why I'm doing it.
It's not easy to write humor either, right? Like because I mean, it can come off so completely different for different people. I think it's one of the more difficult types of writing.
What, to be funny?
To be funny in print.
And thank God, because I can't do much else. I don't have great powers of description. I don't have a really good ear. But I can just make people laugh, and sometimes make people laugh out loud. And all I can say is, thank God, I don't think about it too much, because I'm worried if I overthink it, something might go wrong, and whatever it is might break or fall off or disappear. But I like a joke. Life is so terrifying that all we have is a laughter to get us through it. I can't do it any other way. I do like a laugh, and the Jamaicans love a laugh, and they love. Well, again, they've had such a shit fucking deal for so long that they have really learned to know how to dance, and they know how to laugh, and they know how to fuck. That they're the three sort of free things in life, which are quite fun, and I'm all for it. So
what's next for you then? Are you working on something new now?
Yeah, right now I'm writing my mate has got an incredibly disabled child, and I said to her, it's really embarrassing. I never know what to do when Sonny is in the room, because I don't know whether to address remarks to him, whether to kneel down next to him, whether I'm patronizing him or whether I'm ignoring him. Is there a book I could read about what to do? And she said, no, I wish there was, because all of my adult friends have such trouble with him. No, not trouble with him, but trouble knowing what to do and relaxing. So I looked on Amazon to see if there were any good books, popular books, the kind that I write, accessible books. And it didn't seem to be. So I said to her, hey, let's write it. Let's write a book. Let's write a book about Sonny, about being Sonny, and about what it's like to be him and what it's like to be me. I said to him, you're my worst nightmare. Every time one of my children gets to partition and is going to have a baby, I'm scared you're going to come out. That is where we are with this. But you're here, and actually, I quite like your company. And I realized that I needed to rethink this. So I'm spending a lot of time with him. He can't talk. He can't move. And I'm like, but somehow I'm like, I've got this friendship going with him. And I'm just defining my friendship and trying to describe his world and get into it and celebrate it. And it's a good subject because it's softened me. One of the problems with me is I'm a bit of a hard ass and I can be quite brutal. But he's really softened me. And it's a bit more of a gooey book, which I think would be probably quite good. I think I need to soften up a bit.
Very interesting. Yeah, so I look forward to reading this.
I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I would love to read it. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been really interesting. And we barely talked about the book, but I'll put links in the notes to the blog.
Yeah. If you're going to Jamaica or you want to know about Jamaica, One People is a pretty good book to read about it. I say that myself, and I would not say if it's not true. Although it was written quite a long time ago, there are some things in it that stand the test of time. They definitely do. And their kind of exuberance and their naughtiness and their sexiness is very much in that book. And I love that about them. And they're still like that now. You can actually more important, if you go to Jamaica, leave your all-inclusive hotel, demand to leave and go to Cousins Cove and say that you've heard me on the radio, and go into one of the bars and say you heard Guy Kennaway on the radio, and they will not buy you a drink. They'll expect you to buy them a drink, but they will be very pleased to see you.
Yeah, you've certainly sparked my interest to go there. I mean, I know lots of people from back home in Canada who've gone to all inclusives, and that's kind of the general impression. And I'm not a resort person. I can't stand the places, but so this really hooked my interest. So I hope to raise a glass with you over there one of these days. Yeah,
well, if you ever do go, obviously get in touch with me before you go.
Yeah, that'll be a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All righty, nice to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Personal Landscapes. If you like the podcast, please give it a rating on iTunes and subscribe through your favorite app. You can find links to today's podcast and more conversations on Books About Place at ryanmurdoch.com. You'll also find a donate button if you'd like to contribute to the costs of the show. All donations are greatly appreciated.